If there's one thing we can all agree on, it's that humans will believe almost anything. On Blasphemy with Chris and Marnee, we take a look at some of these beliefs, uncover their very human origins, how they've developed and changed over time, and the very real consequences they had in society and culture. Impacts that continue even today in our lives. Welcome to Blasphemy. My name is Chris Setti, and sitting across from me is my favorite person, Marnee. How you doing?
I'm good.
So, before we tackle today's topic, I just wanted to talk about something that I find fascinating and terrifying at the same time, and that is kind of the modern myth-making that's happening right now in our midst.
Okay.
If you're like me, you've maybe looked at mythology and kind of been like, how the fuck did this start? Like, how did, let's say that's based off of a seed of truth, like a person lived and did something that was, whatever, humanly great, but then it got turned in. How did that happen? Like, you know, that just doesn't make sense to me how it could have, you know?
Yeah.
And it's
totally.
like hard to rationalize that. But as I was watching the impeachment trial, which I usually don't do shit like that. I don't fucking pay attention to that. I just, whatever. I'll catch the highlights. But on this one, I'm like, I'm going to watch it. And holy shit, it was fucking emotional and brutal. And through it, I started scrolling some notes down because, you know, I know a lot about what was feeding into all these people for the last couple years that, you know, committed the insurrection and are being arrested and shit like that. And then while watching the trial, as they laid out a lot of this stuff and kind of put it in this timeline, it was very interesting to look at the mythology that has been made around Donald Trump, like, which is nuts. But let's just take the fucking ludicrousness of the fact that we elevated this man to anything, knowing what we knew about him before he emerged on the political scene. Jesus fucking Christ.
He was just a joke of our...
He was, but listen to this. Like, think about this, okay? He emerges on the scene later in life to begin his holy work, getting a lot of attention for the shocking things he is saying, upsetting the establishment. He travels around preaching his message with major things happening and being reported. People hear his word as the only truth, superseding all other ideas or truths. You can come at them with the most, like, basic, real facts, and they refuse. It's Trump always wins his word. If he said the election was stolen, the election was stolen. I don't care what, you know, all of reality says to me. They develop a system of symbols and slogans to communicate with each other. People are encouraged to do radical things in his name. A fictional backstory is created to bolster his messianic nature and mission. We all know Donald Trump. He's lived in the spotlight. And yet, in the last 2 years, people have woven a fictional mythological idea that he was somehow preparing to fight, you know, the demonic pedophiles that are worshiping Satan and the Democrat Party or whatever. You know, just erasing all the stuff that's in the record, but whatever. Vague and strange prophecies are used to validate his supremacy, right? QAnon. He's like, Trump's going to win, don't worry, calm down. Trump's still in it, you know. People are like, okay. Those who oppose him are branded heretics, traitors, and anyone who betrays him is a Judas, followed by this career suicide, essentially. He's brought up on charges with his followers considering him a martyr, and he seems to be headed for defeat and death, but tells his followers he will be back, something they proclaim to each other and all those who will listen. I was just watching the news, and this guy's like, what I'm afraid of is 15 years from now. If this mythologizing, this demigod treatment that we've given this human piece of shit for some reason continues, and we get enough time from the current events, what is going to happen? We see that with people. People get legendized, Ronald Reagan, the greatest. Fuck that. He was a mess, right? No matter what the history says, we kind of create legends out of these people. But it's just wild to watch this and go, this is what we do. Humans do this.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
There's no force making this happen.
So Jesus might have been an evil guy like Trump.
I
got
mean,
mythologized into
he was to some
God-man.
people. I mean, I don't know. We're going to talk about Jesus, and that's going to take a lot. And I know a lot about Jesus and the historicity of Jesus
Sure,
and
a
the
little
fucking
bit.
and all of that and all the alternative views. And I have my favorites, and we're definitely going to talk about those in future episodes. But yes, it could be. I'm not saying that's true. I'm just saying,
Santa, Jesus,
yeah.
they could have been Trump.
And I'm just gonna
mythologized
implore
and made
anyone
into-
listening. Yeah, exactly. I'm gonna implore anyone listening. Go watch it. I don't mean go watch it on Fox News or MSNBC. Go find this. There's C-SPAN. The full trial is available for free
or
on
you just
YouTube
watch it.
on the C-SPAN thing. Go watch it. No filter. No fucking commentary. Just watch it. I started by going like, okay, I'm going to be rolling my eyes. I'm going to be stretching, and they're never going to get this guy because, whatever. Because the first impeachment trial, I was like, fuck, I believe that he's guilty, but this case is tough, This one, 2 hours in, I was screaming angry.
Yeah.
I was weeping through much of it. It was fucking nuts, and it gave me also a lot of hope because, in general, I'm a Democrat, big D Democrat, right? Sometimes I worry about our bench. We have the same kind of group of people that keep coming up. And I'm not necessarily in love with all of those. Watching these impeachment measures, just go watch. And it was, first of all, it's not boring. I thought it was going to be incredibly boring. It is like watching a TV show, but it's real fucking life and we almost lost our country and you need to go fucking realize that. Go watch it and see. But anyway, I wanted to touch on that. Go watch it. It's important. It's history.
Yeah.
100 years from now, kids will be learning about this in the time that America almost fell, if we don't fall between now and then.
Yeah, right. If we still
So
exist.
you should know what went on and see the facts because they are just facts. It's just video. It's just people saying shit and then posting it online. It's not the Democrats going like, I think this. They're like, watch this. And then they just play a bunch of video and it's brutal. Yeah, I mean, just beware. I don't know, trigger warning or whatever you're supposed to say. But like, my dad was a cop, and I watched these cops get literally brutalized, and I can tell you it was very emotional to watch that, thinking about what those cops' kids were thinking while they watched their dads be beaten with Trump flags.
Yeah.
I mean, by Antifa, obviously, but...
God.
We all know Antifa's a bunch of gap-toothed fucking country assholes. Jesus fucking Christ. Anyway, so... let's get on and fucking move on from that. I just want to show that if you think, well, like, how could it be mythology? How could they make this up? You're watching it fucking happen. They're turning someone into a god. And it is a Christian movement that's doing this. Do not delude yourself.
The type of brain that does that is who is doing it.
Yeah, go look at the pictures of the insurrection. You will see Bible verses galore and crosses and all kinds of shit because they believe Donald Trump is going to, he's become Jesus. He's become their Messiah. And wow. Anyway, in this episode, we're not going to tackle an inherently religious, spiritual, or philosophical topic. And while some of the discussion is overtly scientific and biological at its core, even science is full of mythology around this particular thing. I wanted to discuss something that has a little bit of everything thrown into one. And so tonight, we're going to talk about the ideas of the sinister left hand. So, believe it or not, we're all imbued with a bias, a belief.
Yeah.
And it shows up all over
Yeah.
our expression, right? Whether it be language, culture, society.
In the minutest ways that you don't even realize
Yeah,
are
and
there.
we don't even know. We don't even think about it. And it's like interesting because it seems so innocuous, but as I was studying this, I'm like, holy shit, I need to fucking really deal with this. And so we're going to talk about how the concept of left, whether it's left-handed or just that direction, that side of your body has become associated with evil, badness, the opposite of good.
Yeah.
I mean, you even see that just in our language when I'm like going to say correct. I'm like, right? We don't say correct and wrong.
Yeah.
We say right and wrong.
Yeah.
Because right has this connection to goodness, to godliness, to holiness, to the right way. That's what we fucking say. Yeah. And then the left is somehow considered evil, bad, or whatever. And that's leaked into our society and some crazy fucking shit that I want to talk about. Mm-hmm. And there's going to be some fun stuff to talk about here, too. What has driven our distinction between left and right? It has been deeply ingrained in our cultures and thinking for pretty much our entire existence. These associations have bled into virtually every part, with those unfortunate enough to wind up left-handed by what appears to be pure chance being persecuted, discriminated against, and even considered evil or suspicious throughout human history. And when I say history, I mean until the last 40 years or so in the real sense. We're not talking about ancient history here, folks.
Yeah.
There are 65-year-olds walking this planet who were beaten for writing with their left hand, who were tied to desks, their left hand tied down to their side or to their desk so that they were forced to write with the right hand. We did some weird bullshit in our lifetime, in the current generations that are alive. Yeah. So this isn't old shit. We're just newly trying to break this. What I want to do is examine this topic through some different lenses. We'll take a look at this concept through religion and spirituality, history and society, and then linguistic developments. That's probably one of my favorite, like etymological developments of how we got words and where they came from. And it's pretty wild to see how our thinking, in fact, it's a great way to see our thinking is the words that we create.
Yeah. I have a lot of agreement with you.
I know. I like it. Right. That's what you're supposed to say, right? Left. What I want, did I ever say that? Yeah. First off, we need to get up to speed on an overarching philosophy that entered sometime around 2500 BCE or so. It was brought into Western thought through ancient Persia, thanks to our old friend Zarathustra, referred to as Zoroaster by the Greeks. Remember, we talked about him quite a bit in the Christmas episode 1. Zoroaster, remember, he brought in that Mithras was tied to Zoroastrian, right? And he basically became Jesus. And so, or I should say Christianity was formed around Mithraism, which came to us through the Persians. And so there was another thing that he brought in on the scene. He is credited with the foundation of the first truly monotheistic religion. In so doing, he also introduced a philosophical construct that has impacted all of Western thought to a large degree. It's called dualism. Ah, nice. Look at this. Philosopher wife. And was introduced with his great god Ahura Mazda playing the role of light or good or holiness or whatever we want to say, versus Ahriman, leader of the dark side of evil. This division into this or that, good or evil, light or dark, is the basic framework of this reductionist categorization, and it seems it was this Persian religion prophet who popularized it as his religion spread around the world. Like this dualistic construct that was in Zoroastrianism spread throughout the Middle East, through India, into the Greeks, and then into the Romans, and then into fucking us, right? And so dualism is that concept. You obviously know what it is, but I mean that this or that, good or bad, you're God or Satan or whatever you want to divide it up in. Yeah. And that's in contrast to what dominated our spiritualities and our religions and our philosophies prior to that, which is known as monism. And in monism, while they acknowledge darkness, evil even, curses, death, things that are bad, right? They saw that as all a intricate and necessary part of the human experience. It was part of the whole. Yeah. It wasn't something to be ignored or considered bad. It was, right? Yeah. And they would do stuff to ward them off or appease them or whatever, you know, they attach, whatever symbols and gods or whatever creatures they attach to these things. But it wasn't this good or bad. It was, hey, it's all everything. But then here comes Zoroaster, and he divides things up along these columns, right? And so basically our religions in the West from then on adhere to this dualistic kind of construct, right? Yeah. If you're not on the side of God, you're on the side of
the devil.
Right. There's no in between. There's no like, hey, I choose not to partake in this fight. There's none of that. You're either one or the other, right? I think even fucking is it Jesus? If you're not for me or against me, is that? Yeah. So I mean, like, it's this or that. This philosophical division strongly influenced Greek Gnostic schools in the development of their systems as well, as they divided things up between these dualistic columns: spiritual equals good, physical equals bad, for instance. For instance, like, there were certain Gnostic schools that saw any physical pleasure, any physical delight, any kind of appetite or anything that you want to fulfill as evil inherently, because it's tied to the physical.
Yeah.
Because they had a concept that the physical world was created out of these evil purposes, and thus our role is to escape it through learning shit or whatever, you know? And there were other schools that obviously rejected that, and they went the other way, and there were stuff in the middle. But to a large degree, dualism did come in, and it really also affected early Christianity. There was quite a few Christian sects and different branches of Christianity in the early church that brought in these Greek Gnostic ideas, these kind of mystery school ideas, to where they started rejecting that Jesus was God when he died on the cross. You know, even Jehovah's Witnesses today will tell you Jesus, the divinity of Jesus departed him before he died, because death is a physical thing.
Right.
Physical things are evil.
Yeah.
God cannot have any association with evil, so he could not have died. So the way they figure that out,
So
like, this is
mental
just taking from
gymnastics.
these, right, and this is just taking from these Gnostic Christian heresies. I say heresies because that's what the church called them, but I root for them if they're heresies. But they just repackaged it, right? And it's just modernized, and then old people got together and decided that they were the 144,000 or whatever. They came up with their own spin on it, but it's based off of this dualistic thing to the point where they reject that Jesus died on the cross as God. He died as a man on the cross, and the godhood departed him before that. Fucking weird.
Yeah.
And then there was Christian sects that denied the resurrection. Because of that, you know, and that got them in a lot of trouble and burned like by the people who are following Jesus. In fact, whenever you narrow everything down to two opposing ideas, one being seen as positive while the other is negative, you are caught in the dualistic narrative, and this has definitely played into developments around the idea of right and left, right? But even with this influence, the comparison between right and left seems to range back even further than these Persian developments. Let's take a look at the religious and spiritual evidence that show this belief is deeply entrenched in our subconscious evaluation of the world. In Islam, the right always belongs to or points to God, while the left is reserved for evil, demonic ideas, and actions. There are even two characters that we, in America, are likely familiar with thanks to Looney Tunes, Tom and Jerry, and other cartoons. The Muslim tradition includes two angelic characters named Raqib and Atib. They are referred to as honorable scribes, and their role is to record your every deed, every day, your entire life. So you, jacking off in the corner, they're watching you and writing this down, okay?
Ugh.
One records all your good shit and sits on your right shoulder. The other records all your bad shit and sits on your left shoulder. Both of them will be present at your final judgment to tell on you to Allah. Little tattletales.
Little snitch.
Jesus. Yeah, really. That's what I'd be like. Really, dude? This concept was certainly a huge factor in the development of our Western picture of an angel on your right shoulder and a devil on your left, right? We always saw those cartoons where,
ingrained in us in our
hey, man,
cartoons.
do the right thing. You're like, no, man, do this. Funny. In Jewish traditions, Hebrew scriptures, religious rituals, and rabbinical literature, the left side is considered negative, evil, or cursed, while the right is just, good, and pure.
The right hand of God.
Exactly. Being left-handed disqualify you from...
righteous right hand of God. Is what they say.
There's a lot of that in there. Tons, actually. I didn't even go and look how many, but lots. Being left-handed disqualified you from the priesthood, even if you were of the tribe of Levi and even a descendant of Aaron himself.
Oh,
so only Levites could be priests, and only descendants of Aaron could I mean, they were all temple priests, but only descendants of Aaron could be like high priests and shit like that. And if you were left-handed, too fucking bad. And of course, Christianity, ripping off from everyone, has a lot of left and right distinction. Jesus will return one day to judge everyone. Those he considers good, the sheep, which I love how I'm told about that I'm a sheeple.
I know.
All the time.
I know.
By these fucking people.
According to your beliefs, aren't I supposed to be?
Aren't you supposed to be mindless and easily controlled?
Yeah.
Like you? Anyway.
Part of your thing, but you keep calling me a sheep. I think you're confused.
Yeah. So those he considers good, the sheep, he will herd all of those mindless idiots to his right side. While the bad ones, the goats, who are probably running around, fucking each other, just having a good time.
Having a good old time.
Who dared think for themselves and actually try to do good things for the world, they'll be placed on his left before being sent off to their eternal fiery reward. Because God is fucking good and awesome, obviously. Where things really took off regarding the left, and especially people who are left-handed, was during the Middle Ages, the wellspring of all current Christian thought for the most part. The church taught that the left hand belonged to the devil. He baptized his evil followers with his left hand. Just the left, apparently. Which I baptized a lot of people. You can't just use one hand. People are big in America. Yeah. You're not going to be doing one-handed. But he's the devil. I guess I got to, whatever. He's ripped.
He's just like.
That's right. He's like, got this fucking burly left arm and then just like a wimpy right one. Witches greet each other with the left hand, displaying their allegiance to their dark lord. When Satan watches you and plots, he always does so looking over his left shoulder. And if you want to catch a glimpse of one of his demonic servants, it can only happen during a quick glance to the left. Right? They had all this like stuff tied to the devil on the left. So you can imagine what being left-handed was like in the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
Lots of fun. People debate whether Eve was created from a rib from Adam's right or left side, with most, quote, biblical scholars, meaning uneducated followers listening to a pastor making shit up, ensure it was the right-hand side since it's associated with God. There's actually debates about this. Which rib did God take out? You're like, first of all, can we back up and talk about the taking out of the rib part? Let's talk about that first.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about that, actually. Want to hear something very interesting? I just found this out.
Okay.
This is fantastic.
Okay.
That word used in Genesis 2 that is translated rib in most Bible versions, with some modern translations rendering it side. This is totally off topic. I just had to do this. The Hebrew word that is used is also used in quite a few other places in the Old Testament. And it's never translated as rib except in that one place. Okay.
So they made it up.
In fact, the word rib, as the translation of this word, first shows up in a passage in Genesis 2 in the Septuagint, the mid-3rd century BCE Greek translation of the Old Testament. This has led to much speculation from academia concerning what originally was meant by using this word. A very ballsy professor of biblical literature and Northwest Semitic languages at American Jewish University named Zioni Zevet. This guy's like one of the leading Zioni Zevet, which is a fucking rad name. Yeah. And he's like one of the world-renowned, kind of foremost scholars on the Hebrew language and the development, shit like that. So he's put forth some highly researched and hilariously alternative translation around what is actually being said in this passage.
Well, but you said the word has been used in other places in the Bible. How is it translated in the other places?
All kinds of different ways, and it depends on the context, but it usually has to do with the side of something, or a direction or something like that. Okay. But listen to this. This guy is a scholar in this shit, not like just throwing shit out there.
Yeah.
And so he's put forth a highly researched and hilariously alternative translation around what is actually being said in the passage. His take, Eve was created from Adam's baculum. What is a baculum, you say?
I do want to know.
It's a penis bone.
What?
You see, while human males do not have bones in their dicks, many mammals do. Lots of them do. A feature named the baculum. This dude believes the original was an attempt to explain why human men didn't have these bones.
Oh.
He's like, we all have the same number of ribs, men and women. Adam's descendants don't have ribs missing. But what bone are they missing? The dick bone. And so he truly believes that the original was written by people who were kind of wondering, like, why don't we have bones in our dicks? Like, these are animals. Because I mean, they're killing it. They're doing all kinds of shit. They've seen animal dicks up close, impersonal, chopped them up. So I just had to throw that in. I fucking hope he's right.
He was made from a dick bone.
I put here, I fucking hope he's right, because watching people try and explain this on felt boards in Sunday school would be incredibly fun to watch. How was Eve created? Well, you see, your daddy used to have a bone in his dick, but now that's you. Weird. The point is, the idea of left equals bad and right equals good is clearly and explicitly demonstrated in a range of religious ideas and philosophies. In line with these ideas, there is also a categorization of philosophy and methods that are divided along the left-right duality as well. Especially in the West, we have developed a classification of spiritual ideas along two paths, the right-hand path and the left-hand path. Mm-hmm. The roots of this divisional concept is thought to go back to ancient Hindu tantric schools. Maybe, maybe not. We'll see. I mean, I don't know. I'm just going to tell you what is currently thought for the most part, what the majority of people think. So there are a bunch of schools of Tantra, actually. There's not only two. However, they are divided between two main branches. In one, the tantric practice was purely spiritual. The sexual energy merely used symbolically for personal development. They didn't have sex or anything like that, right? In this school of thought, the woman would sit on the right side of the man. And the other, the practitioners engaged in actual physical sexual engagement through meditative breathing and spiritual connection, believing that the physical experience was implicitly tied to the sexual energy. When this form was practiced, the woman would sit on the left side of the man, right? And so they think that the origins of calling this the right and left, and in that, as you'll see as I continue, you'll see why this distinction, why they would label it like this. Most believe this was the foundational idea used to label these paths. Let's briefly discuss the structuring of spiritual ideas and thought by defining the two. Okay, so let's look at the right-hand and left-hand paths. What are they? There are spiritual pursuits, whether they be a world religion or the cult in your neighbor's barn, that while the details, sacred writings, doctrines, and end-time views are different, have a common direction and viewpoint. It doesn't mean they agree on anything, but there is a layer at which they are on a common path. Yeah. Okay? For instance, when you consider Christianity and Wicca, your tendency is to consider them opposing ideas with very different outlooks. Christians and witches can't have anything in common, right? I mean, that's just impossible if you ask any Christian, right? Or any witch, probably.
Right.
Well, not all of them. That's what's interesting. However, they both represent spirituality that is on the right-hand path. That is because the distinction is not in the details, the stories, or the books, but in the goals. On the right-hand path, you are seeking to dissolve and obliterate that thing we call the self, or the ego, on your path towards oneness with the divine. Whether it is going to heaven to be with a space god, or melting into the goddess, or becoming one with the universe, the motivations and goals are the same. In fact, and no disrespect to my Wiccan friends because I think you are cool and sexy as shit, Wicca has been referred to as Jesus, just with tits. It's a true story. So the right-hand path has this concept of destroying the self and transcending our humanity to join with some divine oneness. Yeah. And so whether you're Islam, Judaism, Christianity, obviously, you know, and all the shit expressions of them, right? And as we'll see, within them, there are left-hand path expressions. There are groups. There are people that go a different way. And while clinging to the same kind of root religion, they kind of go, and we would label them as left-hand path like or esque or, you know, leaning in those things. For instance, in Islam, you have the concept of like Sufism, right?
That's what I was going to say.
Okay, so Sufism. There are, while it's not an explicitly left-hand path religion or sect, it has left-hand path tendencies like the whirling dervishes, right? When you see these people spin. The reason they do that, what they say, according to their philosophy, is that it causes you to collapse into the self, and at that point you realize that the self is all that is, and the self is God. That's very different than I'm going to, what does it say in the Bible? You know, like I crucify myself, right? I fucking die to the self, right? It's about shedding what makes us human in order to become this spiritual ideal of divinity that we've been told we can reach. Okay. We can't, by the way, but that's what people think. The left-hand path is different. Rather than lose the self in order to unify with a spiritual whatever, these spiritualities and philosophies have the goal of self-deification, which sounds weird, right? This doesn't necessarily mean they believe they can become an actual God, though some do on the left-hand path. And that's no different than saying you're going to become a spiritual, perfect thing floating around with God and the angels in heaven. But I mean, but rather the underlying idea that the physical experience as natural humans is all we have and all we can do. And so trying to elevate into something non-human is not only foolish, but damaging to the individual and the collective.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm on that path.
Yeah. Another main difference is the left-hand path's embrace of what is called antinomianism. This comes from the Greek anti, which means against or opposed to. We're all very familiar with anti. And nomos, which means law, and basically translates to without or opposed to law. This sounds crazy and like it supports illegal acts and anarchy, but remember, we are talking spiritual ideas here. While the right-hand path includes a set of ethics, codes, and religious spiritual laws that are to be followed strictly on their pursuit to shed the self and be absorbed into the one, the left-hand path considers nature the only true law and thus rejects any imaginary additions to this ancient and scientific reality. The right-hand path tends to produce missionaries, while the left-hand path tends to produce humanitarians. So that's basically the right-hand path is about shedding the self and transcending to some higher form. And they do so through strict adherence to codes and laws and scriptures and edicts and whatever they got going on. Whereas the left-hand path,
little practices.
Right, they're like self-deification. I'm going to become the best human being I can have within the confines of this natural world, which is all that is and all I can be. And so I'm not looking to melt away from my humanity into divinity. I'm seeking to self-deify.
Yes.
And I don't obey your laws and codes and moralities and stuff. I choose for myself.
Yeah.
It's not about being lawless. It's about having the law within.
Yes.
Right? And that's left-hand path. Okay.
That, interesting, was kind of the awakening that we had even within Christianity. We stopped saying the law and following that and saying the spirit within you will be what tells you how to be all the good that you want to be. You don't have to look at rules on the outside of you. Right.
Right. Exactly. You could almost say that giving people a bunch of laws only just makes them break them more. I don't know. A great way to illustrate this is in a very misunderstood pictograph that has been the subject of mass misinformation for hundreds of years, continuing even today. Everyone's seen a pentagram, right? But do you know what it actually symbolizes, right? Everyone's seen a pentagram, right? And most would say it symbolizes
the devil.
The devil, right? Of course it symbolizes the devil. The cops, your pastor, the gullible parents at the PTA meeting, basically every TV show or movie you've ever seen, the pentagram is presented as a sign of devil worship. Of course, the truth is much different than these reductionist beliefs. Like many esoteric symbols, the interpretation is in the context and the way that it's depicted. Wiccans don't worship the devil or want anything to do with such a force. However, the pentagram is, for the most part in the modern day, a Wiccan symbol, maybe even their logo to a certain extent, when the point of the star is oriented upwards. Okay? A pentagram is not a pentagram, right? A pentagram is what it is based on how you depict it, on how you display it.
A pentagram is with its one
it's the
point
star,
up?
the 5-point star in a circle.
Yeah.
Okay, and the 1 point pointed up. So you orient it so that there's a point pointing up. That is how Wicca uses the pentagram. Okay. And we're going to talk about there's meaning here, right?
Okay.
Why this is. And it will help us understand this left-right distinction while they would be on the right-hand path where some other folks. In fact, I can use the pentagram to help you understand the difference between the right and left-hand paths. The 5 points of the star that make up the central shape each have meaning. The 2 pairs of points on either side, so if say you have it pointed upwards,
Yeah.
and you got four. You got two on one side and two on the other. You know.
Yeah.
They represent the four elements: fire, water, air, and earth. The physical reality of nature, you could say. Okay? The four elements, nature. The other point symbolizes what we would call spirit, imagination, or maybe in the modern sense, we would say mind. Okay? Wiccans orient the star upwards, with the spirit above all else, anchored in a connection to nature, but reaching for the divine, which to them encompasses all the natural world.
Yeah.
Transcending humanity through worship of the goddess and a connection to the spiritual forces of nature, right? That's their goal, right-hand path ideas. And it's symbolized in the fact that they use a pentagram with the point up.
Yeah.
If someone tells you you're a witch and they show you one that points down and they say they're Wiccan, they're fucking not.
They
Or
don't
they're
know what they're
misusing their
talking
shit,
about.
okay?
They don't know their shit.
Right. And remember, that's because what it's saying is our mind, our spirit, our aim is above nature, self-transcendence, escaping these to become one with whatever it is that you get, whatever it is you're after, right?
Yeah.
Left-hand path philosophies, such as Satanism, we're going to talk about that, oriented the star so the point is downward, indicating their elevation of natural reality, requiring human imagination, belief, exploration, and our minds to be anchored in physical reality. Scary, right? It's like, ooh. It's like, so be a rational person, Satanist. Sounds like something that is telling you to sacrifice babies to me, right? That's, Jesus Christ. My point here is that we would all do well to really understand these things that dumb and unscrupulous people keep trying to scare us with. We so easily are caught up in false belief, even radical ones, through ignorance inflamed by misinformation.
Yeah.
You know, these symbols are imbued with meaning, right? And it isn't hail Satan, worship Satan, and demons are coming to get you, right? Yeah. And in this case, you can see this distinction between two paths, and one path choosing to use this ancient symbol that represents kind of our experience. You know, this physical experience we're having, and yet this weird spiritual experience that we seem to have proclivities towards. And how do we deal with that? And some people are like, go nuts and just fly out the top of your head, man, you know, and just fucking reach for the heavens. And the other ones are like, no, that's bullshit. We need to be anchored in the fucking earth, in the reality. What do we say? Grounded. That's what it means. That's what an upside down pentagram really means. Be grounded in reality when you're imagining, when you're dreaming, when you're spiritualizing, when you're worshiping, whatever, you know. Man, this bugs me because I mean, I'll just come clean. Like, I left the church. I was pissed off. I became a Satanist. And what I found there was not what you think.
Yeah.
And I was not looking for that either. I wasn't hoping for what I thought. I was going to confront something that I was like, what is it really about?
Yeah.
Because I've heard all these scary things. I'm not afraid of it because I don't even fucking believe in Satan. And then I get involved in it. Turns out none of them do either.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about this. But anyway, you know, I got involved in a group called the Sect of the Horned God, which sounds, fucking awesome, right? It's a bunch of smart nerds, by the way. Very smart, very intelligent, very awesome, and open-minded and broad. Just their interests are unbelievable. And it's like a left-hand path initiatory order. And this is kind of where I came across a lot of the stuff. And this was, you know, 4 years ago or so, whatever. And then, and you know, you kind of go through these orders. So I went through the order of Pan, and I went through the order of Chernnos, and I went through the order of Prometheus.
A lot of essays he had to write.
It is the nerdiest thing I've ever done.
Books he had to read.
It was a lot. Everyone's like, Satanists are performing rituals and you know, impregnating virgins. You're like, no, they're reading.
No, they're
writing
reading and
long
writing.
things about Nietzsche. Oh man, so that they'll get fucked by the goth girl that they get coffee from or something. So that's what it is. It's crazy. Okay, so the only people that worship Satan are disgruntled goth kids who are mad because their mom made them wear nice clothes to church when they were young, and now they want to piss them off. Or mentally ill people full of the medieval concepts imbued by the church, that is who believes in and worships the devil.
Yeah.
Christians worship the devil.
Yeah.
Just Christians who are mentally ill or fucking something happened and they went the other way with it.
Yeah.
What I have found it's not that all people on the left, like people that call them Satanists, don't believe in Satan. There are some who do. There are deistic Satanists, but it's a very small group.
Yeah.
It would be like if 10% of your church believed there was a God, right? Kind of situation.
Yeah.
You would say, my church doesn't believe there's a God, right?
Yeah.
And Satanism, like anything, there's so many flavors and fucking, that's the point. We're independent. There's no fucking, don't tell me what to do. They're a bunch of fucking rebels that they don't align themselves to, some code or something like that.
Yeah.
And so if you're out there and you hear all these wacko fucking conservatives talking about the satanic agenda and satanic pedophilia, they don't know what the fuck they're talking about. It's their mythology. They invented him.
Yeah.
They're the fucking crazy ones who believe that this exists.
Yeah.
And while they're fighting this phantom that doesn't exist, they're hurting real people.
Real people.
So they're dangerous.
Yeah.
I haven't seen a single Satanist hurt anyone in this whole thing. I get worked up over this because I found something that I was like, it's not like I walk around like, hey, I don't give a shit about it now. Like it's not like I align myself as that necessarily. But what I found in that was, it was mad. It's like when I went to look at marijuana, I was upset by what I found. I'm like, this is bullshit. I was lied to forever.
Yeah.
Same thing with Satan. Okay, so by and large, Satanism represents a human perspective, with Satan simply symbolizing our human and natural reality. They use the character, made up by the church, by the way, only as a way to elevate the natural, physical, and human over the spiritual or wishful thinking. Okay? Satan is our animal and natural side, one that is ignored, defamed, and rejected by many ideas on the right-hand path. They also know that you will fucking freak out and hilariously get everything wrong when they use the symbols and imagery they do. So you are only playing into their hands when you do so. Yeah. See, they don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
People think, that their outrage is somehow they're going to take us negatively. They love that shit.
Yeah.
Because the people that are outraged don't know anything other than their invented mythology that is in line with their bullshit.
Yeah, pretty much. It's the symbols are a way to identify crazy people on the outside that don't understand.
Yes, it very much is.
So you can use that symbol. And people react to it, and you're like, "Oh, thanks for identifying yourself, so I know who you are."
Yeah, and it's not like, I mean, it's funny because I've always been kind of drawn towards darker things. Like, I'm not a dark person either, and people would really, really be surprised. I'm super positive. I'm happy. If I will make you feel great at any time. I love to have fun. I'm super hyper. I laugh at shit, I'm not a dark person,
no.
But I've always been drawn to those darker things. And so I remember even as a kid, I went and saw Star Wars and it's like, everyone would be Luke Skywalker. I'm like, fuck you. I want to be Han Solo. I want to be like the rebel, the renegade or whatever inside of me. So I know that played a role. And what I found was a bunch of people like that.
Yeah.
Who are thinkers.
Yeah.
Yeah. And they're not talking about Satan, by the way.
Yeah.
And just talking on that topic, we get the word Satan from the Old Testament. It shows up in early on, and the word that is used, while it has been personified into a proper noun, Satan, this thing, this person or angel or whatever the fuck you believe.
Yeah.
That's not how it's presented in the Bible when it first shows up on the scene.
Yeah.
It means the adversary, but it means that in kind of the context of a court of law. You could say Satan represents the other side. Okay? And that's what these people are after.
Yeah.
Okay, you say this, I'm going to look at this to see. Because I'm not going to be entrapped by anyone's thinking.
Yeah.
That's how they are.
Yeah.
I don't know how many. I had to read so many books on critical thinking and the scientific method in Satanism school that, just so you know. Okay, so. In fact, the Satanic Temple in Seattle is so fucking evil, they hold concerts, art shows, and other events to take donations to acquire feminine hygiene products for the homeless women on the streets in their city. It is a huge problem. They don't have even the most basic amenities to deal with things that are nothing more than an inconvenience to most. So evil, right? The church would never dare touch such a subject or support women in this very human way. First of all, they're poor. Thus, they did something to deserve that, or else they would be middle class like Jesus intended. Plus, women bleed because they caused the fall of mankind, being cursed with such impurity. Orthodox Jews are not allowed to even sit on a chair after a woman who is on her period has sat on it, or they will become unclean and require ritual cleansing. The Christian church would rather live in some reality where we don't have dicks and vaginas, and so they just ignore that shit and focus on making sure people aren't allowed to have abortions after doing filthy sex. Makes the whole penis bone idea even more hilarious to me, right? Just like, please be true. I know we'll never be able to prove that, but I am rooting for that one, man. I want Eve to be made from Adam's penis bone very badly.
Oh. The whole story isn't true. So
no, I know. I know.
We can say
I'm not saying it's
whatever
true.
The fuck we want. If you want
we
it
can.
to
we
be
can.
true,
no,
that's
what
the
I'm
way
saying
the story
is,
goes for you. You do that.
I want there to be definitive proof that it showed that those original writers meant that. That people have to come to terms with their their whole story. That's what I want. It's not true. And that scholar was saying it's not true. He's saying they were trying to explain. They never said, like, why do we have less ribs? Because we all have the same bones, except for that thing that seems like it should have a bone. We call it a boner. And yet it doesn't. Maybe God plucked out Adam's penis bone and then drew this woman in the dirt, and boom, obviously that happened. I mean, come on.
Obviously.
God damn it. This is actually a great example of the philosophy of Satanism. They see the church and the right-hand path fantasy of transcending our natural humanity and becoming some perfect spiritual being as abandoning reality, paying lip service to humanity as they seek to deny it. Like, they would say, like, oh, you say love people and take care of people? You don't even give a fuck about people. You're trying to escape being people, right? The natural, real human stuff is all that is real to Satanism. By tackling such a taboo and yet completely human issue, they are drawing a perfect distinction. What they aren't doing is worshiping a literal Satan or sacrificing innocent victims in order to gain dark powers. In fact, just real quick, just because I'm on the satanic tip, I got to keep going on this. I want to read a list that shows up in Anton LaVey's Satanic Bible. They are known as the 9 Satanic Statements. And so if you want to know what, like, modern day Satanism, which wasn't even founded until the mid 60s, right? When Anton LaVey founded the Church of Satan and wrote the Satanic Bible. Anton LaVey didn't believe in Satan either, by the way. He liked all the church people freaking out.
Yeah.
And he was a drama nerd just trying to get laid. And it worked fabulously for him, by the way. But these are the 9 satanic statements. This is word by word out of the fucking Satanic Bible. So if you're afraid that you're going to be possessed by a demon, close your ears, like cover your ears or whatever.
Please open your ears.
Number 1,
be fine.
Satan represents indulgence instead of abstinence. Satan represents vital existence instead of spiritual pipe dreams. Right? Again, going to that left-hand, right-hand distinction. He's like, vital existence. We're living creatures like every other living creature. We embrace that. Not spiritual pipe dreams if we're magical beings that need to return to our spiritual home, whatever the fuck. Number 3, Satan represents undefiled wisdom instead of hypocritical self-deceit. He's like, undefiled wisdom means challenging your thoughts and not having it filtered through bias rather than just convincing yourself something is true because you want it to be true. Number 4, Satan represents kindness to those who deserve it instead of love wasted on ingrates. It's a great rule.
Yeah.
Notice he just says, don't love anybody.
Yeah.
Like we would think.
Yeah.
He says, no. Love people that deserve it.
Yeah.
Don't fucking give your love and forgiveness to fucking pieces of shit.
Yeah.
I just saw I follow a lot of, like, you know, people making fun of Christianity and shit like that on Instagram or whatever. And I just saw this little strip where it's like Jesus and he's pointing and there's a little boy next to him. And he's like, see that, Timmy? Those are the 2 people that brutally murdered your parents when you were young. But I forgave them and they're over here. They've been up here having, why don't you go say hi? You know, that whole idea. Okay. Number 5, Satan represents vengeance instead of turning the other cheek. Yeah, I mean, it does. Satan represents responsibility to the responsible instead of concern for psychic vampires, right? In other words, oh, you're a contributing society? Absolutely. You know, I feel responsibility for working with you. But if you're just sucking the life out of me and just, you know, you're just a psychic vampire taking advantage of people, fuck off.
Yeah.
7, Satan represents man as just another animal who, because of his, quote, divine, spiritual, and intellectual development, a lot of sarcasm quotes there, has become the most vicious animal of them all. True? True. Number 8, Satan represents all of the so-called sins, as they all lead to physical, mental, or emotional gratification. He's like, you like to do all those things. Why? Because you do. Number 9, Satan has been the best friend the church has ever had, as he has kept them in business all these years. You see any mention of evil or some kind of idea that God is real and they've decided to fight on the side of darkness? No. It is a list of what is to be human and how the church pretends we aren't. Of course, while they hypocritically run around acting like humans, because that is all we are and all we can be. Yeah. So, you know, and people would be like, well, because it says in there, like, I say, you know, Jesus said, turn the other cheek. If someone strikes you on the cheek, turn. I say, if someone hits you on the right cheek, smash him on the left, right? That's our justice system. You fucking wronged me. Yeah. Now, physically, I can't, whatever, but obviously that's not good. But I mean, the idea is, vengeance is part of the human experience, whether it's in civil litigation or whether it's through, you know, war sometimes, you know, whatever. And just because we're still on this topic, let me read one more list from the Satanic Bible just to illustrate how it has nothing to do with a devil or an actual being named Satan. These are known as the 9 satanic sins, okay? This is sinning against the philosophy of what it is to be on the left-hand path. 1, stupidity. 2, pretentiousness. 3, solipsism. So solipsism is a philosophical idea that your consciousness is the only consciousness that exists. Now, he uses it in a broader term because it kind of manifests in all kinds of weird ways. There are some people who think that they're the only living being and everyone's robots is like this mental thing. That's solipsism. But like everyone's a machine and they're the only living person. It's weird. It's not common, obviously, but it happens. Solipsism is that idea that my thoughts are the only true thoughts, that the way I see them is the way everybody sees things, that, you know, basically a lack of open-mindedness, you could say.
Self-centeredness. Yeah.
Exactly. Number 4, self-deceit, fooling yourself into things that aren't true. Number 5, herd conformity, you know, just going along with the crowd because that's what they're doing. God. Number 6, lack of perspective. Looking at things too narrowly, you could say, you know. Number 7, forgetfulness of past orthodoxies. You know, like, hey, we believe this now, but we used to believe different shit. Yeah. So maybe all the shit we're making up, we're just making up. Yeah. Number 8, counterproductive pride. Notice he throws pride on the list of sins, but counterproductive. He's like, you should take pride in things. Yeah. We all do. Yeah. Christians do too. Fuck you.
Yeah.
And yet it's supposed to be pride comes before the fall, right? I mean, pride is the worst. That's why Sodom and Gomorrah got rained on. People think, you know, the destruction down on it. People think it's because they were like butt fucking those guys, but it was actually, it says later in the Bible, it was the pride of Sodom and Gomorrah that got them, you know, it was huge. But he says counterproductive pride. Like, hey, if you're proud for no goddamn reason and it's not contributing anything, fucking stop it, right? Yeah. And number 9, this is a great one, lack of aesthetics. He's like, if you're going to do something,
make it beautiful.
Look fucking good.
Make it fucking look good.
Yes. I like that. So those are the 9 satanic sins. Most people would think a list. Yeah. Most people think a list called the satanic sins would be full of words like holiness, kindness, love. You know, like don't do any of those other sins and other things they obviously hate.
Print those out and hang them on my wall.
I thought this was a good versus evil, God versus the devil situation. Well, it's not to Satanism. Okay. But they also know that if they fucking do shit that gets you all riled up, it's hilarious to them. It's no skin off their back. You're the only one that gets all worked up. They're just laughing. Actually, what it is really about is fantasy versus reality. Spiritual wishful thinking versus human existence. A perfect illustration of the difference between the left and right-hand paths. Okay. So in this idea of left and right, we've even imbued that into our spiritual systems. And you would see, like, people would be like, Satanism bad, left hand, you know, right hand, God, good, you know, that's a good. So you see what I mean? Like, it even factored in how all that shit. And even in that tantric idea of putting the physical, what would be considered maybe morally questionable stuff on the left, you know, that kind of whole thing. So from a religious and spiritual standpoint, we see the evidence of our association with the left having negative, even evil connotations. This is also true when we consider the historical evidence left behind by ancient human cultures and societies. The Mesopotamians, Egyptians, Greeks, and Romans all considered the left to be bad, leading to this connection showing up in their art, religion, social practices, government, architecture, and virtually everything else, right? You know, for instance, when it comes to the Greco-Roman pantheon of gods, they were always depicted as extending blessings, favor, and help with their right hands, while curses and inflicting punishment are always delved out with their left, right? You didn't want the left hand from the gods. You wanted the right one. The negative association with being left-handed, for example, is so ingrained that even in our modern times, we have people trying to assign this characteristic to people in history to prove their agenda. Some go back and assign left-handedness to terrible people to show the linkage to evil. Hitler is left-handed. Mussolini, you know, they just go back. Genghis Khan. Others go back and try and make popular and positive historical figures left-handed to show it actually makes you great and nice. They're trying to, like, you know, do some character, what do you call that, rehabilitation. Joan of Arc, for example, has been assigned left-handedness. However, there is zero evidence of what hand she favored, and any allusion later in history was likely a smear by the Catholic Church using the embedded bias towards the left, right? Yeah. And so any ideas that she was left-handed was like, well, yeah, that's why we burned her at the stake. That's just further proof. I mean, same thing with Alexander the Great. Some have taken to assigning him left-handedness to leak to his greatness. But historians counter by saying there is absolutely zero textual or artistic evidence that suggests anything of the kind. We need to stop doing this because we need to stop associating left and right hand with fucking moral qualities or like intelligence or whatever. But because of that, people today, I read through websites of people convincing me that people were left-handed. And then I go look and you're like, oh, Jesus Christ. You know, they're just trying to, no, it's cool. Because they're buying into this bullshit. They like to claim that Leonardo da Vinci was left-handed. However, historians are quick to point out that he was actually ambidextrous, meaning he was just as equally right-handed. You know, you can't really claim him. He's on both sides. I think he was on both sides in every way, by the way. This very deep bias is causing people to go back and try and do some reputation rehabilitation for left-handedness by assigning it to positive historical figures, while others are trying to prove the left equals bad viewpoint. The father of criminology, his name is Cesare Lombroso, wrote at the turn of the 20th century that left-handers were not just suspicious and defective, they were, quote, primitive and abnormal, and thus more disposed to crime. Left-handed people. British educational psychologist Cyril Burt stated that lefties were, quote, stubborn, willful, clumsy, and awkward. He fucking died in 1971, a year after I was born.
The year I was born.
Yeah. This was like 50 years ago. In more than a few European countries throughout the 70s, anti-left-hand laws were enforced, with some considering it even a crime to write with the left hand in school, business, or official stuff. There, including the U.S., right? Also here, lefty children had their dominant hands tied to the desk and forced to use their right hands. Sometimes corporal punishment was dished out if the child was caught reverting to their evil left hand. In the goddamn 1980s, a prominent psychologist named Theodore Blau referred to left-handed children as, quote, sinister children. We'll talk about this in a second. And claimed that they were academically and behaviorally deficient and were more prone to serious mental illness. Another psychologist in the 80s stated left-handedness was the result of, quote, neurological insult or physical malfunctioning. Neurological insult? Jesus Christ, man. In the 80s. Later, clinical research would find that the forced switching of hands in children led to a high occurrence of speech impediments, dyslexia, and emotional distress. Yeah. No shit.
Yeah.
Oh my God. It's safe to say the way we have dealt with left-handedness throughout our history up until today demonstrates the ubiquity and power of this belief that there's something different about the right and left.
Yeah.
And yet we don't fucking think about that.
Yeah.
And yet literally societally played it out. Let's move on to one of my favorite topics around this idea, etymology. You can learn a lot about human thinking and belief through the development and evolution of language. And when it comes to the concept of the left, this is particularly obvious. The development of language around the concept of, direction of, or relative side of the left almost unanimously throughout time is rooted in negative connotations, with negative adjectives directly deriving from these ingrained negative associations, okay? So we're going to see that our association with the left is bad makes its way into words that we use all the time. Mm-hmm. We heard this psychologist earlier refer to left-handed children as sinister. The reason he used that word is because it actually comes to us through the Latin word for left or the left hand, sinistra. That's what sinister means, is left-handed. Jeez. So like when we say something sinister, we're saying, oh, it's like someone with a left hand, you know, or left-handed, I should say. Ever heard of someone being called dexterous? It means showing or having skill, especially with the hands. Mm-hmm. The Latin root of that word is dexter, which means right or the right side. Through French, we get the word adroit, meaning clever or skillful in using the hands or mind. Again, from a root meaning right. However, you might emerge from some activity and be described as awkward, a word researchers believe has its roots in a Middle English word awk, which meant turn the wrong way or left-handed. In French, the original word for left is gauche, which we have adopted into English to mean lacking social experience, without tact, or crude. Yeah. This word was used to describe left-handed people in France from its origins around 1751 up until about the 1970s. But since then, it's undergone reform as advocates seek to remove this connotation from left-handed people. They're like, stop this. But when you say like, that's so gauche, what you're saying is it's so left. Yeah. And not right. The word for left-handed in Italian is mancino, a word developed from roots meaning crippled or deficient. The Goths used a word meaning weakest or most crooked for the left side. The Anglo-Saxon word lift likewise means weak or broken. There is also a strong connection between the idea of the left side and cardinal directionality, right? North, south, east, west, right? Some believe that ideas around the left came out of religious concepts around the sun, our one true God for all of human history, including today. Mm-hmm. When you face the east, where the sun rises, stretching out your left hand to the side will have you pointing to the north. Due to this possible origin, many words that developed across various peoples included the connection of left and north. For example, the old Irish word truath means both north and left, right? So they think that that's how that linkage between north and left developed is because the way we kind of like denoted the left side was you pointed north when you faced east. You know, that's your left side. And so north and left became associated. Okay. There is also a development that is interesting in that both north and left also became associated with the direction down, with many words emerging across cultures that indicate meaning around both leftward and downward, right? And we think north, that's up, right? Yeah. That's because fucking maps that we have in the modern world, what's north. But I mean, they didn't have the concept of up, down, but whatever, right? But left and this connection with north became associated with down, okay? Researchers believe this is again tied to spiritual ideas. Before the Middle Ages brought us the image of a fiery, hot hell, most pagan and even early Christian beliefs held to a cold, snowy, icy hell. Oh, I've heard that. The devil in the earliest depictions in Christian art is blue, not red, with other characteristics borrowed from pagan images of the underworld that indicate cold rather than heat. By the way, you should go out there. I think there's a documentary. It's out there for free. It might be on Prime or fucking, I don't know, one of those shit out there. I think it's called How We Got the Devil. Go check it out. It's fucking crazy. You'll see the development of this character that is presented to you as this thing that's been here since the beginning of time. It's not. It was a bunch of mosaics that created that character for you, so you're worshiping a picture. Or, I mean, you're not worshiping. You're afraid of a picture, I should say. Makes sense when you consider that Ahriman, the original Satan, right? That was the bad guy in Zoroaster's dualistic. He had Ahura Mazda, the great god of light, the good guy on one side, and all the things that are aligned with him are good. And on the dark side was Ahriman, basically who Christianity took from to make the devil. Okay. And then they took a bunch of pagan shit from Greco-Roman stuff because that's what they were really working with. But Ahriman set the scene for this chief baddie that was in charge of all the forces. Mm-hmm. He's Cobra Commander. G.I. Joe, Cobra. There's two sides. There's no fucking middle. No one's like going, hey, can we both have good ideas. Can we talk? You know, like they don't do that. It's one or the other. It's dualism. G.I. Joe, right there. And so again, it makes sense when you think that Ahriman was the template for Satan. Well, in Persian Zoroastrianism, hell was a dark, cold, I mean, this was the desert. They fucking cold, dark, icy hell was what they imagined, right? And so that connotation of downward, meaning, spiritual underworld, and yet north, which is the icy, the colder stuff, and left, right? All kind of get wrapped up into bad. We are programmed with tons and tons of social beliefs and philosophies. When we enter this world, we essentially adopt a vast array of comparisons, relative moralities, and the like, all deeply embedded in our consciousness as we develop in this world from infancy onward. These aren't ideas you think about, or really even consider by default. They are part of that subconscious soup of influence that is being used to create our perspectives, views, judgments, beliefs, and opinions. Just like we talked about in the whole Human Rationality series, right? That subconscious, below our radar stuff that is used to fill in the majority of our worldview and ideas and the way we see things is imbued with these kinds of ideas that we aren't really aware of and we don't think about.
Yeah.
Until we go, right? Wait, why do we say right? Why is that correct? It's because of this thing, is that the right way is always God's way. It's always the good way. It's always the whatever way. Positive way. It's a belief, one that is false and predicated on all kinds of superstitions, religious formulations, and revised history. In reality, there is little understanding around what makes someone left-handed versus right-handed. I wanted to look into it and go oh, let's talk about the science. People don't fucking know, okay? Not really. You look out there, there's a lot of people that suggest some things, but none of it is conclusive. None of it is proven. It's all guesses. We don't know.
And that's a playground for imagination.
Of course it is.
That's why there's so much.
Yeah, and so is this. It's also rare. It only happens to 10% of people. And whenever you have something that is that rare, it's either elevated as something incredibly special and good, or you become the ones that we get to dump everything on, kind of idea. Though much research continues, there isn't understanding around this trait as of yet. Some have suggested genetics play a role. Pretty likely, but all attempts to identify the gene or set of genes that play into left-handedness have yielded failure. Some believe there are complications or environmental issues in the womb, leading to particular brain developments that result in left-handedness. Again, it's just a fucking guess, right? Some believe it isn't a born trait at all, but one that simply develops. And in this right-handed world, most wind up being right-handed. I kind of feel that one. This kind of group of scientists and researchers believe that it isn't necessarily a born trait.
Yeah.
But we have a world that has aligned itself to a right-handed world.
Yeah.
Right? Being a left-handed person is pretty tough, especially if you're my age and you grew up as a kid. Now there's tons of left-handed shit. You can go to Amazon. There's whole left-handed stores. We can buy left-handed fucking everything. Right? But back then...
But even when you're learning techniques, I'm a hairstylist, you have to have a different pair of scissors.
Yeah.
And when you're watching...
No, it's a whole thing.
When you're in a class for haircutting, everything they're showing, because angles matter, everything is a thing, and it's... different. It's just,
You always knew the left-handed kids in class, they had ink all over the goddamn hand because they have to write and fucking smear their ink on. They gotta go like this so they don't.
That's how my dad wrote.
Yeah, I mean it was crazy. But now things have emerged where their educators are being taught how to accommodate these things and technology and ways to
But if you can see, we read and write from left to right, which is conducive to right-handed.
It is, and that's. There's lots of cultures that switch that up too. I don't know. But a lot of things, in some cases, that was true.
Yeah.
You're right.
Yeah.
But it's wild to think about how weird that is. We don't know, and I kind of I can get behind the idea that because the guy I was reading, this neurologist, he's like, what if children that are born into homes where everyone's right-handed just end up being right-handed. But what if children are born in homes where either they're not discouraged from exploring with their hands, or there is a left-handed person, and so they already have that example, you know, and they don't tamp down on that. I mean, even parents were going like, "Oh, don't use your left hand," because moms were afraid it meant that their kids were like going to grow up to be serial killers or something. You know, like it was like a mark of evil potentially.
Or they didn't know how to teach them that because they
even that,
they used the right hand, so they were like, "How do I even? I don't know what I need. This is the only way I know to show you to do something is with my right hand."
True, and that's what they were saying is like if
it's
you're
more like the world you're in,
if you're nurtured in a right-handed home,
you're gonna
pretty wild. But there does seem to be a thing that certain people, you know, have a favor for their left hand, and maybe they will find out it's genetic. They've tried, and we're living in 2021, and they're still fucking not really sure. They don't know the brain stuff. There's a lot of mythology and misunderstanding around left and right hands and brains and stuff. It's not like what a lot of people think. Lots and lots of studies have been done, though they mostly represent nothing but correlations rather than yielding any evidence of causality, just like we talked about. We can go through data and our brain finds patterns, right? For instance, you can find studies that demonstrate lefties die earlier than righties. However, you can also find studies that say the opposite. It makes you smart, dumb, clever, creative. You can find all of that. And you can find reports where the vice versa is argued. In the end, there are no real conclusions that bring any understanding for the most part. We just don't know. Why are people left-handed? Who fucking knows? However, we can be sure that the hand you feel most comfortable and capable using does not have any bearing over someone's character, morality, intelligence, or potential. That is nothing more than imaginative nonsense that has been ingrained in the human consciousness through millennia of belief around the sinister left. So the next time you meet a lefty, give them a left-handed high five and tell them you will try to do better. So that's like right and left. It's weird, right, to think that that's a belief. But it is.
I know.
Because we'll say like, well, your right hand's the right hand to use and your left hand is the wrong hand to use. Like, it's crazy how deeply embedded that is, though. And then as I was like considering all these things, I'm like, oh yeah, now I'm a right-hander, so you know, I've got the privilege of the right hand privilege.
Right hand privilege.
So there you go.
Okay.
Your dad's left-handed?
Yeah.
I don't have. I think my uncle might be left-handed. Maybe. I don't know. I don't know of any. I don't have any current people that I know that are left-handed, but it's only 10% of people, so not very much.
Yeah.
So if you're left-handed, don't listen to anybody. And I feel really sorry for you. You shouldn't be the victim of literally thousands of years of prejudice.
I don't know that people suffer anything now.
They don't. I'm being hyperbolic and goofy, but. No, I don't think so now. I think today is the best time to be a left-handed person because, like I said, the availability. Yeah. Because we can crank out products so fast. You don't have to make the decision, should I make a right-handed and left-handed version? Of course you should. What does it fucking matter? Chinese factories cranking out a billion of them. Like, make 10% of them left-handed, you know, kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? So that's really common now. Yeah. When you go buy tools, there's left-handed versions of tools and everything now. You used to just have to fucking figure out how to get along with either using the wrong tool in the wrong hand or fucking learning how to use your right hand. And if it's anything like me using my left hand, it's like an alien appendage on my body. I can't control it. Throw a ball with it, it's like, it looks so funny.
Yeah.
All right. Well, everyone, that's left and right. Hope you guys have a great week, and we'll see you next week with a brand new thing to talk about.